Hey guys, how's the summer treating you? You beating the heat? Yeah, I'm not. No one turn this fan off. I hope the sound is not terrible. If it is, I'll re-record. But otherwise, welcome, welcome, welcome. Today on Jesus What Now? Follow the Money. We are going to go over Jeffrey Epstein's ring of organized crime. So the full script is posted on my Substack if you want to go check it out at Genevieve Gravel. Otherwise, I'll just read it to you. And if I'm looking down, it's because I'm reading. That's what we do here. We read, we write. We write about what we read, and then we read about what we wrote about what we read. So Jeffrey Epstein's ring of organized crime, hyperbole or history? Okay. I mean, so you know how we roll. But if you recall the episode of Follow the Money, we covered a file that mentioned a whole lot of names, many, many names, one of which was Whitney Webb. And this caught my attention, of course, and my curiosity. So I did what any bookworm would do. And I checked out both of the books in her series titled One Nation Under Blackmail. You want a quick book review? Okay. Uh, these books, they got some girth to them. Girl, let me tell you. And the tempo it's kind of slow. There's a whole lot of acronyms, a whole lot of dates, a whole lot of names, kind of like a history textbook. I checked them out from the library and I had a 2-week return date. And I had to wait for like a month with them on hold before I even got them. And I'm not going to lie, I didn't finish them on time. So when you read them, be prepared to dedicate some time. But you won't be disappointed, okay? If you're into these kind of deep dives and this kind of history the way I am, yeah, Whitney Webb is the place to go. And the books, they kind of go over the history of organized crime and the world of geopolitics. Now, you know, I love history, so this was right up my alley. I would give it a 9 out of 10. Just mark it down a little bit because the tempo and the pacing is kind of slow. But reading this book, it all kind of left me wondering, can we call Jeffrey Epstein's world of wealth and influence into geopolitics and all that, um, can we call that organized crime? So on February 18th, 2026, the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee deposition of Les Wexner, yeah, that one where not a single Republican could bother to be, could be bothered with. Not one Republican shut up. Why would they want to question the co-conspirator of the history's largest sex trafficking ring involving children? Anyway, the House Oversight. I'm still baffled by that. Not gonna lie, but the House Oversight Committee, the people that did show up, they brought up an outdated draft message from Jeffrey Epstein to Les Wexner, in which Jeffrey Epstein wrote that the two had been involved in gang stuff. Now, that was one of the most Jeffrey Epstein things to say. If you've spent any time in these files reading these emails, that was definitely written by Jeffrey Epstein. And, Les Wexner responded like with a grin of fondness and like a gleam of remembrance in his eyes, almost like pride. Anyway, in the drafted letter, Jeffrey Epstein described the 15-year-old, very close relationship between him and Les Wexner as one where they owed each other great debts and had been involved in gang stuff for more than a decade. And the phrase, it appears to be a coded or maybe informal way of referring to their shared history, mutual confidences and deep financial entanglement with each other rather than like literal gang activity. Or was it? So the letter also mentioned an argument with Wexner's wife, Abigail, and Jeffrey Epstein's pledge to never put Les Wexner in harm's way or reveal their mutual secret. So, what is the nature of the relationships to have had decades of secrets and lies? I mean, some say that they were lovers. No, I can't confirm. But Les Wexner does deny that he's not gay. He was never with Jeffrey Epstein in that way, right? And that's fine because the rainbow community, we don't claim pedophiles and rapists, do we? No, no, we don't. He also denies knowingly or willingly being the financial backing for Jeffrey Epstein's lifestyle. I hate calling it that. But Les says no, he had nothing to do, and he didn't allow for him to commit, some of the world's most horrific crimes against humanity. And previously, just a little FYI, previous to the release of the Epstein files, Les Wexner and his company L Brands had faced its own allegations of trafficking, most pointedly from the male models from Abercrombie and Fitch. Okay, can y'all say boycott? Like we could get panties and candles and t-shirts from literally any other company. We do not have to shop at L Brands, any of them. Like we don't have to watch a Miramax film. We can send a message that as consumers, the people that are actually lining these elites, their pockets with all this money, if they're going to participate in this type of horrific crimes against people, we're not going to give them their money anymore. Even if the company changes hands and is no longer involved with the people that were in power that founded them, we don't care. L Brands is going to be forever tied to Les Wexner, and Les Wexner will forever be a co-conspirator in Jeffrey Epstein's network. Miramax will always be co-founded by Harvey Weinstein, and Weinstein will forever be a horrific rapist. Find different companies. Anyway, okay. I went off a little off track there. I apologize, sort of. So back to Les Wexner and Jeffrey Epstein. So all the while serving as Jeffrey Epstein's primary financial patron from the late 1980s, really Les Wexner granted Jeffrey Epstein just kind of sweeping authority over his fortune and enabling Jeffrey Epstein to amass hundreds of millions of dollars in assets, including properties, a private plane, a Manhattan townhouse where his crimes took place. And their ties allegedly ended abruptly in 2007 when Les Wexner discovered that Jeffrey Epstein had misappropriated Wexner's funds. Now, their ties allegedly ended abruptly in 2007 when Les Wexner discovered that Jeffrey Epstein had misappropriated Wexner's funds. Abigail Wexner reportedly uncovered that Epstein had purchased Wexner-owned properties and resold them to himself at a fraction of the value. They settled privately in 2008 with Jeffrey Epstein returning about $100 million to Les Wexner. Anyways, it was the term gang that made me question, and it is kind of the whole center point around today's episode. Was this a gang? Is that an accurate description? I mean, should RICO charges be filed? For real. I mean, at any charges, right? Any charges at this point, any freaking real investigations at this point would at least be something. I mean, does justice even exist? Or is it all just covered up? I'm thinking it's the latter. And that's some real gangster shit. But I digress. So you already know. I set out to answer this very question. And here's what I found searching the DOJ Epstein's library. First of all, gangster renders 74 hits, and gang renders 1,518 hits. So let's go. File EFTA02856512 is a highly redacted series of MySpace pages from 2004 through 2006. Okay, so it turns out that Jeffrey Epstein had used MySpace under the username of Jeff. How creative. At first, I thought this file might be Jeffrey Epstein kind of scouring the internet for information that he could use to discredit any potential victims by simultaneously stalking them. But no. These pages came from a public records request, number 17-295, dated 7/26/2017. And this stemmed from the Florida investigation that led to Jeffrey Epstein's 2019 arrest. So in this file, in addition to highly redacted user profiles belonging to a set of twins around the age of 15 in this time period, right? This is over 2 years. Included in this was also police complaints from Cherokee County Sheriff's Office. And the complaints were of missing girls who ended up they just stayed out all night partying. There were complaints of violent outbursts against the girl's father, as well as suspected drug abuse with pamphlets describing the effects of Xanax. At one point, one of the sisters' accounts was taken down, and she made a secondary account, like, haven't we all? I mean, even back in the day of the wild, wild west of social media, we were still losing our accounts and making backups, right? But most interestingly, among these pages was reconciliation pages for Jeffrey's household bank account. And these told the story of how Jeffrey Epstein most likely did target vulnerable youth, offering them promises of cash, and how easily he could find source information to hold against them or manipulate them into participating into behaviors or actions that they wouldn't otherwise consent to. And then we have file 01211056, and this is an iMessage thread between Jeffrey and two redacted names. And they discuss, amongst other things, the fact that the lawyer got all the money and none of the girls. Maybe a point of leverage. But your deal allows for the girls to go tell their stories, he bragged. Pushed that at the conference. I don't know who he's talking to or exactly what he's talking about. This is just what he's saying. And then someone else says to him, a redacted name says to him, I'd like to do a documentary on the real story. Would you let me interview the girls also? Are you kidding? Nope. And then a few lines later, they talk about stock market manipulation and the Chinese fucking with them, really with no context. They probably had a phone call in between that. And then they do move to a phone call and reconvened with a thread, picking up with the girls. Read my address book. No kidding. One girl said she had sex with my friend Stephen Hawking. And then they go on to call her a prostitute, and then saying that there's nothing wrong with that type of rhetoric. It doesn't make her a bad person. Well, no, obviously it doesn't make her a bad person. Being exploited and trafficked makes you a bad fucking person. It doesn't make the girl a bad person, nor does it make her a bad person for sleeping with Stephen Hawking. But they seem to think that this is something worth joking about. Like, and the fact that they even called her a person, like, I hadn't realized they thought of these girls as people. Honestly, they certainly don't treat them with any humanity. Then the pair continued to make fun of Stephen and his disabilities until one says, unlike Trump, she's into a strong dollar. Whatever. And the name that he's talking to is redacted. Like, clearly this is not one of his victims, right? Why is this name redacted? If under the letter of the law, it shouldn't be. Anyway, then they try to set up a time to hang out, but one can't because, unfortunately, quote, I have a 24-hour reality show that I'm on tonight for Al Gore on climate change. Now, this file is dated 12/4/2018. What was that show? Protect our planet, protect ourselves. Let me tell you, there is no shortage of people that appeared on this 24-hour show. Like there's a plethora, right? But amongst them was Deepak Chopra and another woman we're going to talk about, Gina McCarthy. Okay, so we already know. Well, maybe you don't, but Deepak Chopra and Jeffrey Epstein were very, very close. Now, I didn't go into who Deepak Chopra is. I'm kind of assuming everybody knows. If you don't know and you want to know, you want me to do a deep dive into him, let me know in the comments and I will definitely make that video. But him and Jeffrey Epstein, they were close. They were tight. They talked a lot. There's a lot of Deepak Chopra's videos found in the files and so on and so forth. So could it be this guy? Could it be him who's speaking in the thread? But then again, it leads me back to why would this be redacted? Deepak's name isn't redacted throughout the rest of the files. Why would this one be redacted? I don't know. But the thread is asking about making a documentary on the girls. I mean, honestly, I don't know who it could be. There were so many names involved with this production from I mean, there were celebrities, actors, actresses, there were live musical performances, there was keynote speakers, there were people in politics. It was hosted by Al Gore. So anyway, I digress again. Okay, so let's move on. Um, Really, there were so many names, so many connections. But the other name that stood out to me, Gina McCarthy. Now, this isn't to be confused with Gina, Gena McCarthy, the four-time Emmy-nominated producer who directed Surviving Jeffrey Epstein. And that documentary does focus on the girl. Like, A Strange World Indeed, a documentary that explored Jeffrey's world. But no, not that Gina. The Gina with the I, Gina McCarthy. So Gina was associated with Harvard. And as we've talked about before, and we'll probably continue to talk about moving forward, everything kind of seems to come back to Harvard, right? Harvard is a huge player in this world. The institution comes up a lot, and I've talked about on a lot of episodes under the Follow the Money playlist. But Gina, she served under Obama as the EPA administrator. What the fuck is wrong with me? I can't talk. Anyway, she served in Biden's White House National Climate Advisor and served. So BlackRock's CEO Larry Fink, his son Joshua, has been named in the files. Larry stepped into this role at BlackRock after the former CEO Borge Brende, Brende, stepped down due to his ties with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, while she has no direct ties to Epstein, everybody in this world has some ties. I mean, it's not 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon anymore. It's 6 degrees to Jeffrey Epstein, and most don't even need 6 degrees. 2 is enough to link them. And as I said, Harvard's a name that we hear again and again and again. I mean, no wonder they're under investigation for ties with Jeffrey Epstein. Larry Summers, the former president, resigned after maintaining close connections with Jeffrey Epstein. Martin Nowak was placed on leave for the same reason, as well as other benefactors and donors. This current investigation is attempting, or so they say, to rectify gaps left by a 2022 review of Harvard's Office of General Counsel that confirmed that Jeffrey Epstein donated $9.1 million between 98 and 08. There are theories and deep dives that prove to be incredibly fascinating as well, especially in regards to Jeffrey Epstein's ties to the art and tech departments, as well as MIT and other institutions like obviously Ohio, New York Academy of Art, Parsons, like the list goes on and on. But on the iMessage thread that we were going over, that thread continues talking about girls claiming that they were 18 because they wanted to be invited back, before going on into some, oh, my brain is bigger conversations where they want to sound scientific and educated. Uh, Before one of them says, I asked to start a new game theory course at Harvard called the Gangster Game. It describes Trump, Putin, Assad, Duerdogan, dirty, or I can't even say that anyway, comma, and Gambino. Okay, the name's redacted. I don't know who said this, but theory and strategic decisions are taught at the Harvard Kennedy School by Pinar Dogan. Um, and that studies real world behaviors, right? And Pinar seems to have absolutely no connections with Jeffrey Epstein. However, Cambridge's The Gangster Game refers to the talking game, which is an inversion of the classic dictator game where player A starts with all of the money and decides how much to share with player B. The game is frequently used to experiment economics and behavior. The theory is that the gangster, the receiver of the money, will always steal, while the dictator, the person giving the money, frequently leaves the endowment untouched out of fairness or fear of social repercussions. But that makes me think, okay, so if the gangster always steals, what does that make Donald Trump, Jeffrey Epstein, and or Leon Black, who literally walked out of his deposition by the oversight committee, refusing to answer questions regarding girls and NDAs? And let's not forget, when it comes to Leon Black, there was a 15 or 16-year-old that accused him of biting her while in the act of assaulting her. I mean, they all stand accused of stealing power through horrific acts against humanity, not to mention the corruption and the financial theft that's playing out in real time in our face. Right? $14 million for a reflective pool. That needs another 1.4 million in repairs, not weeks after the construction is completed. Please. And all of that going to direct donors, like all those contracts, that work is being done by direct donors of the President of the United States. I mean, come on, that's some gangsta shit. At least according to this game, it is. EFTA 01882985 on 5/15/2012, Jeffrey Epstein and Redacted seemingly are talking about Stephen Bannon. However, they only address him as Steve. I assume it's Stephen Bannon because Steve Bannon and Jeffrey Epstein were very close. They talked a shit ton and about all kinds of stuff. But Jeffrey says, Yuri's partner is Ian Osborne, my good friend. Yuri money is Russian gangsta money. Steve has to be cautioned. Yuri is clever, but Russian. And then the redacted recipient responds with, you know Yuri Miller? Well, I didn't know who the hell Yuri Miller was until I checked him out. So, I mean, it's not like the internet's just going to say, yep, this Russian oligarch is in the Russian mob, at least not like directly, right? They have all the power and ability to scrub the internet and silence people or run, fluff articles. So you're not going to get any kind of like direct stuff unless there's actually an indictment and conviction for um, organized crime type activities. So when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein, Yuri Mindler said of the disgraced financier, the usual. I only met the guy one time. I hardly knew him, or whatever they all say. Right? I didn't know him. I just gave him a freaking townhouse. Whatever. So, in EFTA 00963274, Jeffrey Epstein says to Michael Wolff, the Paradise Papers show the Kremlin funding money to Kushner using Yuri. So let's get into who Yuri Mindler is. He was a Soviet-born Israeli entrepreneur, inventor, physicist and scientist. He was born on November 11th, 1961, and was educated at the University of Pennsylvania, Wharton, Moscow State University, and the Faculty of Physics at MSU. He made most of his money outside of Russia. Actually, 97% of his $8.7 billion he made outside of Russia. And he hasn't held Russian tax status since 2011. He hasn't even been home to Russia since 2014. He's been an Israeli citizen since 1999, and he's also lived in California. I mean, the boy gets around, okay? He invested early into Facebook and Twitter, both who obviously have ties with our current president of the United States, Donald Trump. And they both have direct ties to Jeffrey Epstein as well. I mean, this is not new news. Yuri also invested in Spotify and Airbnb. The New York Times repeated Jeffrey's accusation that Yuri Mindler had investments in Facebook and Twitter, and they were fueled by millions of dollars originating from the Kremlin. His early financing was backed by Russian state-controlled institution called VTB Bank, as well as he had investments that were linked to a sanctioned individual, Alisher Usmanov. You know how we do it here. I don't try. Sometimes I do, but I try not to mispronounce names, so I just spell them to you because I'm uncultured and I have no idea to speak. Anyway, so Yuri maintains that his investments were purely commercial and that he stopped taking Russian money in 2011, right? Even though he was getting all this money from VTB Bank as well as Alisher. But due to his investments and his ties, his backing became the subject of the 2016 Russian election interference probe. Now, some speculated that Russian money was deliberately used to manipulate social media to undermine election integrity. And this comes up a lot when we go through Jeffrey Epstein's world and his connections. This particular 2016 Russian interference using social media, as well as just using social media to influence or mind control or radicalize, from 4chan to Twitter to Reddit to the 2016 Russian interference into the United States election. It's a reoccurring theme, right? And maybe we'll get into that in a later video. But so Yuri is like, no, I stopped taking Russian money in 2011, but due to his investments and ties, kind of raises the question, did Jeff, at this point, how can we not conclude that Jeffrey Epstein was not directly involved with the Russian interference? Not just because of Yuri, but because so many others that we have talked about, including Stephen Bannon, especially Stephen Bannon. Like in Follow the Money, and there are several videos in my playlist we talk about, and another content creators deep dives as well. I mean, it's deep. Y'all, there's so many players, there's so many connections, and what a tangled web indeed. You know what I'm saying? So Yuri Mindler wrote the Eureka Manifesto, the mission for our civilization. I didn't read it. One thing that did catch my interest, though, is that Yuri invested $100 million in the Breakthrough Listen project. Okay, side note, this made me think of Stephanie Harlow's deep dive into the missing scientists and their connection to Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, it's a 10 out of 10. I highly recommend that you give Stephanie Harlow a follow over on YouTube if you're into the whole Jeffrey Epstein connections outside of, I mean, you can't really separate him with what he was doing with the sex trafficking ring, but there is a whole nother world. And she really deep dives hard into the missing and dead scientists and how they could be related to or have some connection to Jeffrey Epstein's world. So 10 out of 10. Anyway, back to the Breakthrough Listen initiative. launched in 2015. It's the most comprehensive search for extraterrestrial community. They want to talk to aliens, okay? Aliens, they exist. The government just told us. And the Breakthrough Listen initiative, they want to talk to them, utilizing advanced radio and optical telescopes to scan the skies for intelligent life. It's funded with Uri's $100 million. The project employs the Green Bank Telescope in West Virginia, the Parkes Telescope in Australia, and the Automated Planet Finder to analyze vast regions of space for potential signals from extraterrestrial civilization. The Breakthrough Listen project continues to evolve with plans to utilize data for new telescopes, including Vera Rubin Observatory and the Meerkat Array in South Africa. These advancements are expected to further enhance the project's capabilities in search for technosignatures or evidence of technology that may indicate the presence of life beyond Earth. This is all according to their website that I'm reading to, okay? So where did I leave off? Evidence of technology that may indicate the presence of life beyond Earth, representing a significant effort in the quest to understand whether we are alone in the universe, with its finding and methodologies contributing to the broader field of astrobiology and the SETI research. So they were co-founded with Mark Zuckerberg in 2018 and signed a partnership with NASA, who's federally funded, unlike Elon Musk's SpaceX, who is privatized and funded through the government contracts and subsidies. Now, when the company SpaceX went public, Elon Musk became the world's first trillionaire on our tax dollars, right? For a few days anyway, before his stocks took a hit and dropped him out of the trillionaire status. But come on now. You want to talk about some gangster shit, because SpaceX doesn't offer goods or services to the American people. It relies on government contracts and funding. So it's a private company that our tax dollars are paying for, that can do the stuff that NASA can do, that our tax dollars publicly fund. Yeah, that's some gangster shit. I'm sorry, that is some gangster shit. At least in the terms of a gangster gang. So let's talk about Elon Musk for a minute. From innovation and ideas, our tax dollars, private data, even taking food out of the starving mouths of children through Doge. This man's a thief, draining the endowment. According to many emails with Jeffrey Epstein, it seems like he also really wanted to party on a predatory island. But I don't think Jeffrey Epstein liked him too much. Just saying. And let's not forget the infamous, at least according to me, I go back to this file a lot, EFTA 01026813, an email thread to Kathleen Rumler forwarded to Michael Wolff, where Jeffrey Epstein is discussing Donald Trump's money laundering, stating, if you're a gangster, where and how can you invest your money? The answer is not through the front door. Now, Jeffrey Epstein clearly had a fascination into the world of organized crime, from the movies to following different cases and articles and whatnot, and just the use of the word gangster and gang. Gang. He called his friends gang, his associates gang, his victims gang. Everyone was his gang, I guess. He even requested that his assistant, Leslie Groff, have a jacket. I almost said motorcycle Jackson. What a motorcycle jacket made for his friend Boris, with the reference to a gang she guesses, she thinks it was the Revengers on the back. Um, and while all that seems kind of like fanboy type shit, the fact still remains that his legacy and the world of the predatory class that's left in his wake were trafficking children, missing people, deceased victims, theft, including art, deeds, and intellectual property, and the theft of innocence. There's also the world of money laundering, pardons for drug importers, and so many secrets and lies. Shell companies, LLCs, the list goes on and on. And the cherry on top is that that's just what we know of, leaving us to wonder really what's in that missing 3 million files. And are we ever going to see justice? Will we ever see justice? I mean, I can't say, doubt it, but I can't say. But in this world of organized crime, the cover ups, they're in our faces. They're in our faces. And we're powerless to stop it. And while I do think we could call it organized crime, it's not like the world of The Godfather. There's no boss calling all the shots, but rather a world of influence, information, and power filled with an elite class of powerful players, one that we call the predatory class. It's all connected and interconnected. They're just not running the streets. Rather, they're running the world. I want to thank you so very much for hanging out with me today for another episode of Gigi Says What Now. I'm your host, Genevieve Gravel. My friends call me Gigi, and I hope that you'll be my friend. Be sure to hit that subscribe button or the follow button, whatever platform you're watching me on right now. And next time we are going to talk about the government wouldn't do that. I promise. Where we kind of deep dive into all of the corrupt things and the kind of organized crime things that we started going over here from different true crime cases, and we try to bring them all together. And some history cases as well, including the Iran-Contra affair. So I do hope you'll join me for that if you want a sneak peek or just to read the transcripts. Uh, the government wouldn't do that is already up on my Substack. You are free to check that out. It is not behind a paywall. And until next time, I hope you remember that you are valid, you are worthy, and you are loved. Thank you so much. Bye.